In 1982, the wacky oddball shenanigans from Airplane literally flew back onto the big screen in Airplane 2, the sequel, with many familiar faces returning along with some new ones. Only this time there is a science fiction element added to the formula, where the aircraft in question is now a space shuttle that is full of passengers, in a story set in the future which also features a colony on the moon. Yes, if the first Airplane movie was a satire of disaster movies of the early to mid-70s, then Airplane 2 feels more like a satire of the science fiction craze of the late 70s and early 80s. But despite shaking the formula up, many felt that Airplane 2 failed in comparison to its original, and was basically just a retread of a better movie. So I guess the big question is, does Airplane 2 have any merits of its own? Has it been judged too harshly, or is it indeed a poor sequel? In my previous Airplane episode, I mentioned Airplane 2 and how it wasn't as good as the first movie. And a lot of people said, hang on a minute, I really like that sequel. Why do you say this, Minty? I'll sue you. So let's unwrap this movie by looking into 10 things that you didn't know about Airplane 2, the sequel.
And by the way, I spoke to Elaine this morning.
Elaine? Was she here?
No, she called me and asked me to tell you that she's marrying Simon.
Number 10. The original team didn't want a sequel. The first Airplane movie was written and directed by the comedy dream team of brothers David and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrahams. And of course, Airplane was a huge success, bringing in a tasty $171 million on its paltry $3.5 million budget. So, naturally, Paramount Pictures wanted a sequel, to keep the Airplane success to be flying high. And originally the Zuckers and Abrahams were on board to work on a sequel, but they very quickly changed their mind and decided that they didn't want a sequel after all. However, Paramount Pictures greenlit a sequel without the Zuckers and Abrahams' permission, supposedly anyway. The Zuckers and Abrahams weren't happy that the production was going ahead without their official blessing, and even protested it. But despite the trio's displeasure of the sequel going ahead without them, the production of Airplane 2 still went forward. As a result, the Zuckers and Abrahams have never actually seen Airplane 2. Surely they can't be serious. Well, it's true. They had never seen Airplane 2 apparently, not one frame of it, and don't call them Shirley. Number 9. So many sequels, such little time. So Paramount Pictures had to find a new creative force to help bring Airplane 2 to life on the big screen. And in order to get some talent involved, Paramount took inspiration from another sequel that they were currently working on at that time, Grease 2. Which, like Airplane 2, was a sequel to a very successful movie, of which the original movie's creative force wasn't involved in its sequel. Grease 2 was written by Ken Finkelman, and despite the fact that Grease and Airplane couldn't be any more different as far as movies go, Finkelman was hired to write the script for Airplane 2, as well as direct the movie. I guess it was felt that if he could write the script for Grease 2, then clearly he must know a thing or two about sequels, I guess. So I guess Paramount was like, hey, he's writing Grease 2, let's get him on board to write Airplane 2. Grease 2 and Airplane 2 were actually released in 1982, and if you can believe it, they actually weren't the only sequels that Paramount made that year, as they also released the more successful Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, and Friday the 13th Part 3. Yes indeed, this was sequel fever. Number 8. One of Airplane's biggest stars also didn't return. As far as the cast goes, Airplane 2 did manage to bring back several faces from the original movie, including Robert Hayes, Julie Haggerty, Lloyd Bridges, and Peter Graves. However, someone who truly stole the show in the original Airplane was Leslie Nielsen, who played the Doctor, whose deadpan serious delivery of dialogue always kept the laughs coming in large supplies in Airplane. However, when it came to Airplane 2, Nielsen declined the offer to return, where instead he teamed up with Airplane's original creators, David and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrahams, to work on the comedy TV show Police Squad. Sadly though, the show wasn't too successful and got cancelled just after 6 episodes, but it did lead to the creation of the Naked Gun movie, so I guess it paid off after all. I don't know, to me, Airplane just needs Leslie Nielsen. His presence just completed that first movie. Incidentally, Robert Stack was also offered to star in Airplane 2, but he too declined, as he thought the script was just a retread of the first movie, and a few years later he would go on to terrify everyone in Unsolved Mysteries. Number 7. The music and sound from all around. Elmer Bernstein composed the first Airplane movie, delivering one very funny piece of music, as it takes itself very seriously, which contrasts to the absurdity of what's been shown on the screen. Airplane 2 does feature some music by Bernstein, but it also has additional music by fellow composer Richard Hazard, who is probably best known for composing music for the original Mission Impossible TV series. The music is fine. To me, it's not as powerful or as distinct as the first movie's music, but hey, I ain't complaining either, it gets the job done. But I do like how the music this time does go for more of a science fiction sound. There are actually several sound effects used from other popular works of entertainment at that time that are heard throughout Airplane 2. For example, when the shuttle takes off, the music that is heard in that scene is from Battlestar Galactica. Airplane 2 also uses the strike and buzzing sound effects from the game show Family Feud, as well as sound effects from the Atari 2600 game Yars' Revenge. Look, you know it's the early 80s when a movie is using sound effects from an Atari game. Airplane 2 probably has other sound effects from other TV shows and movies of that era. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised. Number 6. Other sci-fi references. Using the Battlestar Galactica music aside, there are actually several other references to other popular science fiction movies thrown into Airplane 2 for good measure. Yep, Airplane 2 was spaceballing before Spaceballs was even a thing. So the movie stars William Shatner, and so naturally there has to be a Star Trek reference, and sure enough, when looking for a periscope, he sees the USS Enterprise.
Just hope he has the right stuff.
This is actually footage from the original TV series. The funny thing is that that exact same year, Shatner was also starring in the as mentioned Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan. Also, the window at the Transdental Air Desk reveals a futuristic city in the background, which is in actual fact a futuristic city landscape from the 1976 science fiction movie Logan's Run. Which is really random and makes me wonder if Paramount had to get some kind of permission from MGM. In addition to all of that, the title sequence used in Airplane 2 uses the similar flying title effects that were used in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Hey, that's pretty cool. Also, not science fiction related, but Airplane 2 kinda predicted that the Rocky film series would have a ton of sequels, in which Sylvester Stallone would be starring in the role till an older age. And also keep in mind that when Airplane 2 came out, there was only 3 Rocky movies, so how did they know that this was going to happen? Number 5. Airplane 2's trailer is weird. So a trailer was put together, which is an interesting case indeed. The trailer itself claims that watching Airplane 2 can make bald men grow hair, and I can say with absolute certainty that Airplane 2 doesn't make you grow hair if you're bald. It also claims that watching the movie can clear bad skin and remove warts.
Hey, remove warts, help convicts go straight, clear up bad skin, turn an upside-down cake right side up.
I particularly like how it has a list of stars who show up in Airplane 2, along with a list of stars who don't show up in the movie. The list of stars who don't appear in Airplane 2 include King Kong, Prince Charles, James Dean, Aquaman, Daffy Duck, and Lawrence of Arabia. Then we get the movie poster for Airplane 2, and to me it's not as good as the first movie's poster, as it just doesn't look as iconic. And I don't know, maybe this is a pet peeve, but the illustration makes it look too much like a cartoon. There are actually several different versions of this poster, some featuring the shuttle pulling along Santa Claus, one that has a water skier attached to the plane, wonder if that's a Jaws 2 reference, and one that has a heap of passengers holding on for dear life. This one even features the Easter Bunny. The Japanese movie poster is interesting because if you look at the shuttle, they've actually given it a face. I also like the revised cover that would be used for the movie's DVD release, which shows the airplane seen on the first movie's poster, only now it has 2 knots, because this is part 2. So yeah, I actually think that this one is pretty cool. Number 4, deleted scenes. There are a ton of deleted scenes, and I mean a lot, that never made it into the theatrical cut of Airplane 2. It's a shame as some of these deleted scenes are actually quite funny and do bring out the LOLs. So how were these deleted scenes discovered? Well, from Airplane 2's TV broadcasts of course, where throughout the 90s, Airplane 2 would be shown on American TV networks in their entirety with the deleted scenes added back in. Now this was common practice back in the good old days, as it would extend the movie's running time, and this meant that more adverts can be shown throughout the movie. So really it was just that, it was about showing more ads. But yeah, back in the 90s, fans of Airplane 2 could watch the movie in its entirety, with all these wonderful, glorious deleted scenes put back in. Who knows? Maybe one day they'll release a DVD or a Blu-ray with all these deleted scenes added back in, with the picture cleaned up and given a HD makeover, just like they had recently done with the TV version of Superman the movie. But then again, it also depends on if there really is a huge demand to release this longer cut. Number 3, scrapped Airplane 3. Airplane 2 ends with a title card stating that Airplane 3 will be coming soon, while hearing a voiceover from William Shatner saying that's exactly what they'll be expecting us to do. Although the whole thing may have seemed like a joke, as well as being a commentary on sequels, Paramount Pictures were actually intending on making a third Airplane movie, making these wacky oddball movies a trilogy. So, why was the third entry never made? Well, the most popular belief is that it was due to the disappointing box office results of Airplane 2, along with the not so flattering reviews. However, the website filmstories.co.uk offers an alternative take on the cancelled sequel, and explains that it was actor Robert Hayes that led to the movie to be scrapped. The site claims that he gave an interesting interview, where he said that Paramount kept asking him to come back to make a third Airplane movie, but he simply didn't want to do it, on the account that sequels were frowned upon back then. He also claims that Paramount kept trying to organise deals, and were increasing his fee more and more, but he kept taking other acting jobs instead, until he flat out said, "Nah, I don't want to do it." And that was the end of it. He did admit though that a third movie was very close to being made, but in the end, he just didn't want to do it. In a twist of fate, Hayes would actually go on to say that he actually regrets not making a third Airplane movie. So yeah, Airplane 3 will always be that comedy movie that could have been, but never was. Number 2, Australian title. Yes indeed, when Airplane 2 the sequel was released here in Australia and New Zealand, it was given the alternative title of Flying High 2 the sequel. So why on earth did this happen? Well, that's because when the first movie was released in Australia and New Zealand, that too was retitled to Flying High, because for some reason distributors thought that the title of Airplane sounded too similar to another movie that was out in that part of the world at that time called The Concorde Airport 79. Which to me is just bonkers. I mean, come on, are you for real? The Concorde Airport 79 doesn't sound a thing like Airplane. Come on guys, put your sensible hats on please. But regardless, it was retitled to Flying High, and thus when the sequel came out, the Flying High title was passed on, as Airplane was popular in Australia and New Zealand, but everyone knew it as Flying High. They actually didn't know that the movie was really called Airplane, so it kinda stuck. And even now, to this very day, in this part of the world, these two movies are known as the Flying High movies. In fact, calling these movies Flying High is so engraved into my brain while making this episode and the previous Airplane episode, I keep accidentally calling the movies Flying High. Number 1. Weird 3D glasses mishap. There was something of a boo-boo which took place at an early screening of Airplane 2, where theatre audiences were given 3D glasses, which made them think that Airplane 2 was actually going to be a 3D movie. But after the movie started, confused audiences were greeted with a blurry picture, thanks to the as mentioned 3D glasses, as the movie was obviously not in 3D. To this day, it's still unclear if this was a joke played on the audience, and if so, by who, or if it was some kind of honest mistake. Still, it's pretty funny though, and it goes with the nature of the Airplane movies. Airplane 2 was actually a Christmas movie as it was released in December the 10th, 1982. I mean, as mentioned, it even features Santa Claus on the poster. It sadly only brought back $27 million at the box office, which is a drastic drop compared to the first movie. And what also didn't help is the fact that Airplane 2 had a much higher budget than the first movie, with its budget being $15 million. By the way, does anyone else find it incredible that both Airplane movies were only rated PG? And both movies have some pretty naughty and edgy bits in it, so it just goes to show how hardcore we were back then. When Airplane 2 was released, it opened in the number 2 spot in the box office, behind the Richard Pryor comedy, The Toy. It also didn't get very good reviews either, with people complaining that it just wasn't as good as the first movie. So this takes us back to the question asked at the start of this episode. Is Airplane 2 a bad sequel, or is it just misunderstood? Well, as with most art, it depends on the eye of the beholder. Personally, I don't mind it. It looks and feels just like the first movie, but maybe the first movie is better because it was the first movie. Look, if it's fun, silly, goofy gags you want, then you will have a chuckle with Airplane 2. In all honesty, it is just harmless fun. I think the first Airplane will always be a classic. And for good reason. But I do think that there are some hidden treasures within Airplane 2. So go check it out if you like the first movie. Anyway, I'm Minty, and if they did make an Airplane 3, would it be called Airplane 3 The Trilogy? See ya!